How do you rank power in Heir to the Stars? When exactly does power become irrelevant and the wrong turn to use? In the Heir to the Stars franchise, there is a strong arrangement of areas that increases a character's status, also known as subs. For the most part, it's in order of priority. However, there are hidden areas that require special awareness to tap into. Understanding each area increases one's status, but stepping into each area requires the subs to step beyond.
What exactly are the limits of power? The royal flush have been gathered together to play a game, not only to determine exactly those limits, but also to find an heir to the absolute infinity. Journey with the Zeus as they go through the infinite omniverse and beyond in order to find the limitations of power. You've got Heir to the Stars, Heir to the Stars 2, Dynamis, Prey, Glory of the Defeated series, Swan Song, Church of the Necessary Evil, All World, and Heir to the Stars Overture are just the tip of the iceberg, the first part of this series. Heir to the Stars Overture is the final book in Phase 1. Solecism, Guidepost to Tomorrow, and the final story are the tales that take place at the same time, but they open up the second phase of Heir to the Stars. The Never-Ending Battle, A Song to Sympathize with the Devil, Dreams Epilogue, After Epilogue, and Pharaohs of the End create the second phase of Heir to the Stars. And Pharaohs of the End is the conclusion of that second phase of Heir to the Stars. Melodybind Kaleidoscope is what one would call the interlude. Its event is absolutely colossal as it releases Heir to the Stars to what it should really be. Introducing new tiers and the transcendence of the realm, it opens up new doors to Phase 3. Like Yesterday, The Never-Ending Poem, Battlestorm, Rebirthing, and The Continued Story. These titles are the chorus of Phase 3 of Heir to the Stars, and in this effect leads us to the conclusion of Heir to the Stars 3, where Heir's ending opens up the first phase. Heir to the Stars is the first volume in the Heir to the Stars series. It was published in 2011 and is the first story written by Lionel Suggs. Somewhere in between Heir to the Stars and Heir to the Stars 2, there was a suit named Joker. Take a journey into the world of the final suit as the end of all verses draws near. Heir to the Stars Joker is the first side of the Heir to the Stars series. It was written and published in 2011 by Lionel Suggs. Now let me tell you a little bit about it. This story takes place on the second floor of the cosmic ladder, the Zwayverse. Now, there are many concepts that can be akin to that within from the first floor, as well as locations. However, this is to show the ever-climbing ladder and that more than one singularity can exist on a transcendental plane.
To quote a poster, omnipotence is an overused term in fiction, and only small amount of verses implement it correctly. Suggs' verse isn't one of them. Here's the thing. Characteristics of a real omnipotent is simple only to perspective, boundless beyond limitations and definitions, beyond dualities, trialities, and infinalities, etc. The principal source of all concepts and realities itself, all-encompassing, transcending all creation, yet interpreting all existence. This is simple to one's perspective, but not another, especially since these attributes are all empowered by perspective, because then we dive into the perspective of other variations of omnipotence. The problem I hear is how Heir to the Stars uses omnipotent at all in the verse. True omnipotence can be transcended. Meta-omnipotence, which is beyond omnipotence, exists. Heir to the Stars demonstrates the interpretation of omnipotence in many ways, but of course there are those that do not approve of omnipotence in Heir to the Stars because it does not fall under their definition. Oh well. The fact that absolute, true, and boundless omnipotence is transcended does not debunk omnipotence. I go beyond using it as simply a boundless source of everything in the universe. It's not just basically beyond all. There are types of omnipotence. There isn't a black and white, or either you are omnipotent or not. There is transcending omnipotence. Just because the omnipotent of the verse was transcendent doesn't mean it wasn't omnipotent in the first place. This reasoning that likes to be played around with over 90% of conversations isn't relevant in Heir to the Stars. And to add to this, I'm not throwing words around that I do not understand to make my verse sound any type of way. Everything has a definition that you can understand. Everything is shown through demonstration. If the way I show my meanings through my work doesn't suit you, oh well. Just because some believe that I don't understand something doesn't mean it's not serious. Everything people say that I don't understand, I've thrown it back in their faces with not just one definition, but a collection of definitions and interpretations to show that I do understand it. At this point, people just don't want to accept what they've created their reality to be. When I see certain threads about Heir to the Stars, people don't like what isn't the commonly accepted. It becomes, you're using the word infinity wrong. You're using the word omnipotent wrong. You're using the word square, triangle, and circle wrong. You're using the word logic wrong. You're using the word meaningless wrong. You're using the word exist wrong. Basically, you're using the word wrong. If our realm of understanding was the only realm of understanding, then what place does interpretation have? What place does those that operate on a different form of understanding have? But back to the topic at hand. There are 2 videos that exist which expresses what omnipotence is that I've created. And I haven't heard anyone say that I was wrong about the definitions. However, once we step beyond omnipotence or meta-omnipotence, the problem arises. Why? Everything is right there. You have omnipotence and its meaning. And guess what? In Heir to the Stars, it's surpassable. That's the end of the story in terms of omnipotence. However, there is higher. The first floor is where omnipotence is. Beyond the first floor, omnipotence is for the cannon fodder. It's a surpassed apex that no longer holds any meaning to anything beyond the first floor. And guess what? The cosmic hierarchy in Heir to the Stars is so massive that mere cannon fodder are beyond the scope of the first floor. Omnipotence is an overused term in fiction, and only small amount of verses implement it correctly. Heir to the Stars uses all the terms of omnipotence and simply doesn't care if its principle is at the bottom of the tier list. There's so much greater complexity to the verse. Welcome to episode 1 of Beyond Omnipotence, or Meta-Omnipotence, where we kill off the belief of omnipotence being the apex point of potency. This could actually be the prelude episode 2, but still. The start of this episode feels like it would be a rehash of something I've already done. I've done 2 videos of omnipotence already, in which the links will be in the description box below. The term omnipotence has been used to indicate a number of different positions. These positions include, but are not limited to, the following. A being is able to do anything that it chooses to do. In this version, said being can do the impossible and something contradictory. A being is able to do anything that is in accord with its own nature. Thus, for instance, if it is a logical consequence of a being's nature that what it speaks is truth, then it is not able to lie. This is an odd interpretation, but okay. It is part of a being's nature to be consistent, and that it would be inconsistent for said being to go against its own laws, unless there is a reason to do so. You know, this actually throws in the whole an omnipotent being cannot lose argument out the window, and I just don't think anyone's ever really noticed that. But we're going to dive into that too. So, Oxford definition says having unlimited power, being able to do anything. Webster definition says one who has unlimited power or authority. Dictionary definition says almighty or infinite in power. Vocabulary definition says having unlimited power. Synonyms definition says having great power or force of potency or effect. Plato Stanford's definition says it's maximal power. One sense of omnipotence is literally that of having the power to bring about any state of affairs whatsoever, including necessary and impossible state of affairs. 2, a second sense of omnipotence is that of maximal power, meaning just that no being could exceed the overall power of an omnipotent being. Both of these, Plato Stanford's definitions, or rather the sense they give omnipotence, is ironic that people will choose one or the other. Sometimes it's both. And we're going to dive into that later. I just want to point that out. Wikipedia's definition is the quality of having unlimited power and potential. Listen to this definition again. It is the quality of having unlimited power and potential. I can keep going, but that would be a 6-hour video pulling up all these definitions. But do you see where I'm going with this? It's as I said before, omnipotence doesn't have one true definition, and you cannot say that there is only one way to use it. I get there are philosophers that will go in deeper into its meaning or its definition, but this is how it's being told. I'm not saying pick one simple definition of omnipotence and go with it. I'm not saying listen to what I said and only hear what you want, nor am I saying go look at the web for the definition that looks the strongest and make that the universal one. I'm saying keep an open mind to the fact that there isn't just one correct way to use it. Can there be the coexistence of omnipotent agents? Among contemporary philosophers of religion, Richard Swinburne from 2008, he holds that a plurality of coexistence of omnipotent agents is possible, meaning this topic has also been explored. They have created arguments based on quantum mechanics and metaphysics to try the plurality of omnipotent beings at once. Basically, they're saying that, we can have one thing I read was a whole collection of omnipotent beings in the same place. But we're going to get into this in the future also. So now we get into what the series is going to be. What is beyond omnipotence? Can we reach it? Well, if you look at the definitions of just some of the terms I brought about, yes, how can it not be surpassed? Let's say we take the Oxford definition, where it says having unlimited power, being able to do anything. Nothing about this says that it's the absolute pinnacle point. Nothing about this gives us its impressions. It's just clear cut. What if we introduce a being that isn't simply this clear cut and a bit more than what the previous was? Something that was beyond that being's definition of power and not connected to their principle of anything. Webster's definition says one who has unlimited power or authority. What if we took that quote unquote or literally and measured a character as omnipotent because they have unlimited authority? We can simply throw presence greater than its authority and boom, we step beyond. Dictionary definition says almighty or infinite in power. We can go beyond this simply with a definition like this. Synonyms definition says having great power or force of potency or effect. Do I need to go on? If they are just using this as their definition and this is the true omnipotence, do you think no one can surpass this? This is just a warm-up. This will wrap up episode 1 as I am just introducing what we're going to get into. Beyond Omnipotence, episode 2. Today we are going to discuss the plurality of omnipotent beings. We all know the question at hand. Can there be more than one omnipotent being? And the common answer is no. Why? Because of influence. One omnipotent being could not freely influence another omnipotent being. If so, there would be only one omnipotent being if it ever existed. If one wins in a situation of influence over the other, then one of them was not omnipotent. And if neither is successful, then neither is omnipotent. Basically, they would conflict with each other, and that's when things get funny. So here's my position. What I just said above, it's outdated. The logic is wrong. Just like how the omnipotence paradox can be solved, this too can be solved. In itself, there isn't a real logical contradiction in establishing multiple omnipotent beings. In all honesty, two omnipotent beings conflicting with one another could be considered a task that is logically impossible and is instead incoherent nonsense. You pretty much solve it. There is no point in them conflicting, and thus they both remain omnipotent and more. But it's up to me to take this a step higher. Because let's be honest, this literally shows that there are limitations to omnipotence when we actually try to apply it to reality, sometimes leading to illogical nonsense. And I'll even add this simple question. Does omnipotence mean power overall, or does it mean unlimited power? And which definition do you take to be true out of the long list of omnipotent definitions and perspectives? A multiplicity of omnipotent beings would each possess all essential properties appropriate to their almighty status. They would also possess properties essential to being distinct and separate personas. Each and every truly omnipotent being is equally perfect, exemplifying the fullness of their principle in their own unique way. In the end, we are the ones that are ignorant of omnipotence because we apply lesser definitions and meanings when it is most relevant for us onto them. whereas they may have a different sense of said definition. Victory and defeat might be absolutely irrelevant and nonsense to them. That's how I apply it in my work, and when you see a clash like this. But when you're reading it or debating it, there has to be a winner or a loser. And the loser loses all value, or the term loses its value. Why? Because you decided that it was time to apply your value of victory or defeat onto this rather than use theirs? Think on it. Because in Marvel Comics, you have several beings that declare themselves as omnipotent, but then you have the debates that state there is only one true omnipotent being. The rest of them are just nigh. But you don't hear them saying that they are nigh omnipotent or almost omnipotent. So which definition are they using? They have a cosmology of multiple omnipotent beings. Dark Tower by Stephen King, you can argue, has this too, except we all know Gon is always going to be the answer. I feel like Xenogears tried to do this too, correct me if I'm wrong. The plurality of omnipotence gets explored, but then gets shut down off of a distinct logic. Why aren't we using a different logic to accept it, since the very notion of this plurality requires it? Beyond Omnipotence, Episode 3. Let me start by touching the topic that expresses that there are no omnipotent characters in anything. People will bring up one of the definitions of omnipotence, which states having unlimited power, able to do anything. The topic expresses that there's no way to actually demonstrate that level of power. And even if someone were to somehow own all of fiction and create an omnipotent character, said character still wouldn't be able to directly affect real life, us. Thus, there'd be something they couldn't do. Therefore, they're not omnipotent. There is so much wrong with this expression, but this is how people think. In Heir to the Stars, this logic does exist, but it has no value and potency to do anything. There are plenty of entities and principles that have demonstrated that they not only have unlimited power, but they're all able. They can literally hold all, and the all within their hands and freely manipulate it. It's not about dictating logic, human rationale, and conceptualization, and the means in which we make sense and meaning through in the English language. Omnipotence itself comes from the Latin language, correct? And there are different languages other than English that has omnipotence, right? I find it a problem that there are people that cannot take their logic to the next level or their conceptual understanding and see the layers of omnipotence and the layers that are beyond omnipotence. So let's go back to the beginning. Is there a way to demonstrate a character having unlimited power and doing absolutely everything? Is there a way to demonstrate omnipotence other than a statement that says character 0 is omnipotent? And if so, can you step beyond it? Yes, to all of the questions. What is the grand principle of creation, y'all? Tell me, what is the grand principle of creation? What is the union of possibility and nothingness? And what does that create? If a character can literally create the establishment of these, they have created totality. It's not as simple as they established creation, but they established all and more. Wait a minute. I'm giving too much away at once, so we'll stop it here and continue later. But let me end it with this. There is the distinction between true omnipotence and omnipotence. But then when someone says that there is something beyond omnipotence, to people in general, the word itself loses its meaning. Why? Omnipotence as a concept is not defined as something that cannot be surpassed. That's just fan talk. The concept itself doesn't betray its very definition just because it's surpassed. We really need to start changing how we look at omnipotence and try to level up beyond the old way of thinking. Because at this point, it's outdated.
Hey, where are you going? To the art gallery, right? Good. You can find all the things Heir to the Star related at www.heirtothestars.com. And hopefully you can surpass the Ace of Spades while you're at it. Come on.
Kind of working. Beyond Omnipotence, Episode 4. What happens if an omnipotent character decides to create omnipotence greater than itself? What I get from that is that an omnipotent decides omnipotence needs to be surpassed, and that's it. I am told the original omnipotent would still be above the ones who surpassed it, as well as below them, or else it would not be omnipotent, which is explained with one of its paradoxes. That was interesting. So, if an all-powerful, perfectly true omnipotent wanted its omnipotence to be surpassed, and it happened, that makes it that it wasn't omnipotent. Is that where I'm getting? Because that sounds like faulty logic on our part. Why are we using this antiquated logic? Why are we using this reasoning? And this is where I'm getting with this. Our reasoning and logic and understanding when it comes to omnipotence is absolutely asinine and antiquated. If it doesn't make sense, then the omnipotence is faulty. Think about when omnipotence was first established, which from what I could find is from the 1590s or the 14th century. Correct me on that. But when the word omnipotence was put onto a god, it was usually a faulty god. Don't come at me. We know about the Latin meaning of the word. We know about how the French uses it. We know about how it is used in distinct religions. I mean, Aquinas argued that God is completely omnipotent and in charge of the whole world. He can do everything that is absolutely possible from the 14th century to now. Shaking my head. And people take this so seriously, yet this term has evolved. You can argue what true omnipotence is, or the true meaning is. But the fact of the matter is that if omnipotence is what it was, it never should have evolved. Its meanings never should have been expanded. It should have been an absolute definition, an absolute principle. Yet it's not. You cannot prove that it's not. I mean, you cannot prove that it is. Think about metaphysics and pataphysics. I've seen certain wikis that try to state that pataphysics is beneath it. But omnipotence is effectively the collection of metaphysics. And what makes this something odd is that some metaphysical principles are basically either omnipotent or should be something that makes omnipotence what it is. But with current logic, people have a habit of alternating their logic to make omnipotence makes more sense than everything else, when if you really use your head, it doesn't. Our reasoning and logic and understanding when it comes to omnipotence is absolutely asinine and antiquated. It's time to elevate our minds. We are taking a concept and a definition and saying it is beyond concepts and definition and indefinable, yet defining it. But then we are saying it can't do something greater than itself, or else it wasn't what we thought it was, or it won't be what we thought it was. So can an omnipotent character decide to create meta-omnipotence, a principle greater than itself, and still remain omnipotent? Or is logic unable to evolve itself and thus limit omnipotence? Can omnipotence be defeated? When you hear this question, the first thing that you think of is either simply no, are you stupid, or omnipotence doesn't exist. By the very definition that many believe, an omnipotent being is capable of anything, including surviving anything. What if it doesn't want to, though? What if you create an attack or effect so powerful that omnipotence just doesn't give a crap and says, I'm done, and let the attack remove it? Omnipotence didn't technically lose, since it ended itself of its own volition. Can omnipotence be defeated? When this topic comes up, ironically, people use logic to defend why omnipotence cannot lose. Yet omnipotence is supposed to be beyond logic or encompass it. Thus, we enter into the types of omnipotence. This becomes a truth type token conversation then. Standard thinking leads to logic being greater than omnipotence, when omnipotence is by definition able to overcome, destroy, or change logic. Or since an omnipotent can do anything, it can think of a way to make it work, even if there is none. Can omnipotence be defeated? The concept of omnipotence is often misunderstood. Let's take the popular example of God. To say that God is omnipotent does not mean that God can do everything. God cannot do what is logically impossible, and God cannot do what is contrary to his own nature. That is one of the versions of omnipotence that exists. What if he feels like it's logically impossible to just let it go and allow an effect to remove him from being? According to St. Augustine, God is rightly called omnipotent, though he can neither die nor fall into error. For he is called omnipotent on account of his of his doing what he wills, not on an account of his suffering what he wills not. For if that should befall him, he would by no means be omnipotent. Wherefore he cannot do some things for the very reason that he is omnipotent. Then you got St. Thomas, who states, all confess that God is omnipotent, but it seems difficult to explain in what his omnipotence precisely consists. For there may be doubts as to precise meaning of the word all when we say that God can do all things. However, we consider the matter all right, since power is said in reference to possible things. This phrase, God can do all things, is rightly understood to mean that God can do all things that are possible. And for this reason, he is said to be omnipotent. So basically, in one definition, omnipotence cannot do some things for the very reason of being omnipotent. Is that a paradox? In another definition, we don't exactly know the meaning of all when it comes to omnipotence, but at the same time, omnipotence is still bound to possibility. And before you try to come at me with what all is, I suggest you actually read the Hermetic scriptures on the expansive definition of various alls. I want to explain Summum's philosophy of all, but that will take longer than what I want this video to be. But on one of the Hermetic maxim philosophies, it states that while all is in the all, it is equally true that the all is in all. According to Hermetic doctrine, the all is a bit more complicated than simply being the sum total of the universe. Rather than the all being simply the physical universe, it is more correct to say that everything in the universe is within the mind of the all, since all can be looked at as the mind itself. In effect, the universe is partially existent on the mental plane, and we may in fact all be parts of the all's psychological makeup, representing parts of the all in its dream or meditation. However, even with everything in the universe being a part of the all, it is still possible that other things exist outside of the all. For example, the all may be just like us on its own level of existence, with its own the all above it. Other beings will be part of that greater all, having the same difficulty interacting with us as anyone else has entering the dream of others. I find it interesting that Hermetic doctrines can look at layers of the all, but yet when I do it, it's asinine. Can omnipotence be defeated? If you have made it this far into the video, yes. In Heir to the Stars, omnipotence can be surpassed, and is done so casually while maintaining the definition. The Ace of Spades, the creator of the verse, has made it so. After all, the Ace of Spades is omnipotence, establishing the grand principle of creation, being, logic, and word, and will, and pure act. To the Ace of Spades, he's beyond the former, yet it's still valid to the Ace of Spades. Besides, if the Ace of Spades could not establish the means of omnipotence to be surpassed, and yet still maintain its definition and principle without paradox, wouldn't that mean that the Ace of Spades could not do something? Tier human. In Heir to the Stars, the term human is an acronym for hierarchy, unevolved, morphology, abapical, noumenon. It is a constant that remains the same, with the only exception being in Solecism's past arc. Human means the same for everyone labeled as one, unless it is referring to a specific dimension in which humans are identified. There are regular humans, metahumans, transcendent humans, and higher dimensional humans. Humans are the expression of the lowest concept in Heir to the Stars. That doesn't mean that humans are always the weakest characters, but it's that their origin and inherent qualities provide them with the least benefit more often than not. The inherent power of a human in and of itself is very little. However, humans have the ability to learn, to manipulate and take advantage of various forces like science, religion, law, magic, and so on in order to boost themselves. While the term human physiology of other works typically uses the field of physics as the basis for their abilities, Heir to the Stars humans use any of an abstract chain of different fields. In Heir to the Stars, humans are empowered by various things other than physical, spiritual, and mental exercise, and other ways of physically perfecting the body, generally by realizing the logic of Heir to the Stars. The last remnants of humanity from the series Solecism represents the highest state that humans can achieve. with the exception of Eve, who has vastly transcended said realm. Coup de Grace is a group of higher dimensional humans that represents humanity that have broken all dimensional boundaries, including the state of self. Pharos of the End is a series that features humans like Dania, Danielle, and Mark, powerful in their own right, but nonetheless human. Blue Rose is an organization of humans who utilize the power of the frozen flame. This faction was established to seek out all contradictions within the world that distorts the time-space and eliminate them. Each member carries the license to annihilate and are by law the supreme authority over all other law enforcements. Again, they only appear in Solipsism. Period, another group that appear in Solipsism, is a street gang of humans who manipulate the power of science. They were assembled by an organization to find out the whereabouts of xenogems. However, their only clue was a person who had fallen asleep, and you'd have to read Solipsism to get what that means. Ultimately, though, humanity within Heir to the Stars can express various feats from annihilating an entire infinite metaverse to stopping metaverse. Wow, why you? Sorry. To stopping metaversal metaphysical annihilation without effort, to reacting to infinite speed, or even breaking through logic barriers. Being human is, for better or worse, the lowest pinnacle of being. But depending on your strength of will or logic, you can rise to be better than the tier you stand on. Chris Ryan Spades, the Ace of Spades, the original protagonist of the Heir to the Stars series. He is the spiritual successor to Smoke of my earlier stories, Prophecy. He is the father of Pulse, another character that bears the title Ace of Spades. 23 years before the first storyline, Chris Spades came into existence. He wasn't born, he wasn't created, he was just here. He didn't know why or what his purpose was. All he heard was a voice telling him to find the 3 sacred flames and prevent the lifting of the veil. In Heir to the Stars, Zachariah confronted Chris Spades and told him about the coming end. He offered him a reason to exist by stopping the group Asashi. Soon enough, Chris Spades encountered each member of Asashi, taking them down one by one. During his journey, he would encounter the supreme being Tente, who elaborated on why he existed. By the end of the story, it was revealed that Chris Spades was the harbinger of the end, for it was him that ended the original Omniverse. In this context, she was talking about Prophecy. Now, before Heir to the Stars Overture, Chris Spades had mastery over the space-time continua, as well as all dimensions regardless of their physical laws. Now, I gotta bring this up because after this first book, time manipulation almost became irrelevant. Like, every character in the series pretty much can ignore that stuff, can surpass it. Like, only in the first book is time manipulation actually something relevant. After that, like, it's meaningless. Like, the characters pretty much all surpass the concept of time. But yeah, basically he could halt the entire space-time continua, rewind sequence of events, fast forward events, and etc. He could see through the matrix of space, allowing him to be able to gain instant information about anything he wanted. He was also a story manipulator, meaning he could alter the contents of the plot at will. He could, what else could he do? He could rewind pages of the book, bringing back the entirety of an event. He utilized this when he returned and erased Terrorverse. Also, since his opponent was confined by the story, he showed that he could rewind the story back to before Creations Immemorial, back to where his opponent could not possibly exist. It was also shown that he could stop all events within the story. His greatest feat was showing that he could enter into the mind of Tente. Of course, by Heir to the Stars Overture and continued story, he no longer needed those powers and abilities, as he was able to walk on the plane of Sugsverse von Kagami Ende and reject cataphysical plot manipulation. He is currently in the middle low end of tier 5 when it comes to the limits of power in the franchise, but his potential stretches into tier 0. He just hasn't unlocked said potential. There's a reason I say that, because the mere fact is, despite the power that he's shown, he has shown that he could enter into the mind of Tente. And as you all know, Tente, aka the Ace of Spades creator, is in tier 0. So it shows that there's potential there. Also, he is the first entity to break free of the Ace of Spades, the creator, and become a true free agent. Because as you know, technically you could say he's a personification of the creator, but not. But at this point, yeah, he was the first character to break free of that, to become his own true free agent. Chris Spades definitely is a character I would keep my eye on. He has many, many more stories coming within the next couple of decades. Trust me, he has like at least 4 books coming out within the next 10 years. And there's so much more coming his way. This story started with him. And trust me, he is still a very, very prominent character. Airgrave is a Pata character from the story Re Melodybind Kaleidoscope. Airgrave is a Pata character that comes from before the unwritten page, where existence and non-existence, possibility and nothing, were not of potentiality, uncertainty, unknown, or actuality. With awareness of the coming of Chaos Ceremony, he gained the assistance of Bryn Amberley to stop the coming event. Airgrave is the first user of Realm Reborn Red that is demonstrated in Heir to the Stars. Through sheer feats, Airgrave demonstrates a great amount of author authority. Airgrave has shown to lift up his Airgrave has shown to lift up his pinky, literally creating everything ranging from all of fiction, non-fiction, transfiction, fanfiction, metafiction, patafiction, interfiction, and all of personal and impersonal fiction on top of it. Every form of existence and non-existence ever mentioned or seen, and above the absolute infinite multiplicity amount never mentioned, seen, or even conceived of yet, in possibility, uncertainty, and actuality, was completely on the tip of his pinky. Airgrave has shown to be able to open up his hand, create an infinity and eternity, just to be doing it. Airgrave has shown to be able to open up his hand, create an omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience. In fact, Airgrave's hobby is creating omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience. He has been able to open up his hand, showing that he can create creation and void. Airgrave is able to slam down his palm, generating a lance of lightning that bypasses the boundaries of the story and the plot, escaping the necessity and potentiality and actuality of possibility and nothingness, removing a character or Pata character, even one that possesses Realm Reborn Red, from the story, verse, and plot. Airgrave is able to do in actuality look towards the outer perimeters of a transcendent, boundless hierarchy, erasing everything from all of fiction, non-fiction, transfiction, fanfiction, metafiction, patafiction, interfiction, personal fiction, and impersonal fiction permanently. Every form of existence and non-existence ever mentioned or seen, and above the absolute infinite multiplicity amount never mentioned, seen, or even conceived of yet, in possibility, uncertainty, and actuality, is completely erased from possibility, totality, and nothingness from a mere glance. Just a mere glance of him creates this effect. The story also reveals that Airgrave is not part of the story. Airgrave is not even a character. Airgrave isn't bound by the signature of the author, paratext, intertext, or fanfictional context. Airgrave is not a part of any existence or non-existence. Airgrave is not a part of possibility, totality, or nothingness. Airgrave is the first character that uses Realm Reborn Red, demonstrated in Heir to the Stars, a character operating on the 4th floor. Lamont Heartfelt Vanity. He is one of the main protagonists of the Solecism series. He appears in Pharaohs of the End, Glory of the Defeated, Continued Story, and Heir to the Stars 3. He is married to Capri Vanity. He was married to Cece Torres before a reality shift, and he was married to Angelica Heavensen before he rewrote the narrative. He has his own personal group called God's Will. Lamont is legendary throughout the works of Heir to the Stars, titled the Black Monarch. His legendary status and feats have extended even into the Heir's Ending Nilology. He was chosen to be the substitute replacement for the vacant seat of the Ace of Spades. He wasn't exactly replacing him or deemed a successor, but his potential was so monstrous that the Ace of Spades personally chose him to be the substitute for his title. Lamont is one of the strongest paradoxes in the franchise. He has access to the Pendulum Kingbreaker form as well, which ranks him in Tier 0 once he shifts into this. Pharaohs of the End reveals that Lamont's potential is greater than what anyone could have realized, as a Voyager herself made an actual appearance before him, fully removing him from ever being. In Continued Story, the Black Monarch would appear to challenge the Ace of Spades. The Black Monarch stood above the creator of the Heir to the Stars, not even attempting to reach the concept of effort in doing so. Lamont is one of the few characters that have reached and surpassed the Lion's Den. In Heir to the Stars 3, he is shown to surpass the embodiment and personification of the Heir to the Stars cosmic hierarchy. Lamont is on a mission to remove all those that stand above the beyond from all stories. In other words, he wants to remove everything that has the power to create. He wants to remove the Voyagers themselves from their throne. The mission of Apologia Actoris is that of the Church of Necessary Evil. There is a mystical balance that needs to be maintained in existence. And while the principles of benevolence and evil are not seen as important to possibility and nothingness, they are. These are the principles that create judgment, that create meaning, that establishes purpose. To the Church of Necessary Evil, the principle of evil is not a negative means to a positive end, or even a negative means to a justifiable end. To the Church, evil is the means and the end, the motivation and the justification. Evil is a necessity, because in the end, in order to defeat evil, one becomes evil, leaving only evil. Nazon Cadenza is a priest of the Church of Necessary Evil. Nazon Cadenza is the first character introduced within the story, talking with fellow member La Regina della Tempesta about various definitions of good and evil. While the two discussed the role and the purpose of humanity, it was revealed that Nazon Cadenza was the youngest member of the church, but yet he had grasped a vast amount of knowledge despite his youth. Nazon Cadenza is operating in this conversation, doing what he can to tip the balance in the favor of evil. Good has already done too much. In terms of humanity, they do too much to try to fight against evil, rather than embrace it. We gain a bit more of his mindset as the story continues, such as there is no such thing as truth to him. Actuality is an illusion. Nazon Cadenza is a being that is able to blink away 616 centillion infinite multiverses in the very first chapter. At the same time, we see him nonchalantly snapping his finger, just a mere snap, completely unmaking the existence of an infinite amount of sets of levels that each contained infinite multiverses, each composed of infinite universes, as well as many other infinities of various realities, dimensions, realms, and planes of existence. This was interesting because this was written, I think, in like 2011. So some of my terminology is different, and these feats definitely on the low end of certain things I do, but we'll keep going. In this first chapter, Nazon Cadenza started to whistle, whistling a note at a frequency that countered the very principle of the highest level of infinity's own vibrational frequency, shattering the essence of the union of the nothing and all possibility. Nazon Cadenza can project a mental yet immaterial representation of his existence into the world. This existence acts as an envoy for himself. This representation, just as powerful, I don't think just as powerful as him, but it's extremely powerful, as the forces of the omniverse that represented balance gathered the forces of good from all possibilities and actualities in order to defeat him. However, because of the mentalities from the forces of good, a chain reaction happened that turned all of his opponent's attacks and willpower back to the state of zero. All supposed actions created by all of the forces were reset back to point zero. Neson Condensa turned all possibilities, actualities, and phenomena back to the state of zero, completely erasing everything that was, is, and never could be. Like I said, this dude definitely on the low scale, but I like him. Like any religion, the beliefs can tend toward ascending or descending ends. In this case, it is better to reign in evil than it is to ignorantly bathe in the benevolence. Once you attempt to set up a legend like this to explain the necessity of evil, you welcome the ones with the most open minds to worship it. Let me definitely say that this isn't like my beliefs or nothing. I know how people like to twist crap. This is just a book, and this is just a book that favors characters who worship evil. Discussion time. So when I'm getting linked to certain threads, or even when I'm researching myself, I see things that raise an eyebrow, like I'm The Rock. When I hear that omnipotence is this and that, or that a certain character has been quantified, or that Sugsverse shouldn't be taken seriously because of how it's structured, the reasoning is odd. How is it odd? I'm about to sound very arrogant to some. I can tell that people are literally using just one simple logic. It's a one shoe that fits all. I find it odd that people can do this when we barely know less than 4% of the known universe. And it's weird that they say that my work is illogical when in fact, I'm the only one using the omniverse correctly, or even omnipotence. Instant victory per se. Instant victory in one universe doesn't mean instant victory in all universes, because the logic of victory isn't the same in all modes and attributes of the omniverse. The definition of victory isn't the same in all modes and attributes of the omniverse. The value of victory isn't the same in all modes and attributes of the omniverse. The omniverse is all modes and attributes in play. You have meaning, non-linguistic. You have meaning, philosophy. You have meaning, linguistics. How do we know that meaning on this planet, in this galaxy, is the same as meaning in another one? How do you know what's illogical and logical in this series of dimensions? Isn't it, how do you know it's not absolutely different in another series of dimensions? How do you know that the logic of absolute infinity isn't different in every single timeline, dimension, reality, plane of existence? Are you telling me possibilities are that limited? Or are you telling me that in an expanse where all modes and attributes are in play, concepts that mere humans with no real power can actualize are simply limited to this? It's interesting that I'm trying to take concepts beyond the realm of simple human understanding and really go beyond. And people instantly backlash because one shoe must fit all sizes with certain terms, despite the absolute disadvantage that we have with so many definitions that can easily change. The fact that you have your omnipotence and someone else's omnipotence, and then have variations of it, and then try to supersede particular definitions of it, doesn't that indicate that there are different modes and attributes in play already? And in this finite space that we are in, couldn't there be modes and attributes beyond what names, terms, and definitions can actually imagine? Why has it become so standard to just accept mediocrity when we should be trying to really surpass ourselves? That's why my books are here.
Joker here. Yes, I brought you here. I'm writing your narrative and everyone else's too.
I already know this one's about to be controversial. Suggs potence. Suggs potence is the upper stage of a status that is all able to no-sell the echelon of meta-omnipotence. Suggs potence is unconstrained even by transfictional omnipotent metalogic. It surpasses the pure act of absolute nature of cataphysics, ignoring the type token of its individuality. Because individuality is technically a power, Suggs potence exists beyond said attributed mode. And while other, and I quote, and while other transfictional omnipotent creators are watching totality, unified and immanent and transcendent simultaneously, Suggs was watching beyond the realm of transfictional omnipotent creators, watching them as they were watching totality. Suggs potence is the meta outside of the meta, completely being the answer behind how transfictional omnipotent creators can even be, as well as the grand principle behind said status. In simple terms, being beyond the all, or the transfictional omnipotent creator, doesn't help you much against Suggs potence. A Suggs potence question is, if I ask you, what omnipotence is the truest in my cat box? And your reply becomes true no matter what answer you give, you just answered Suggs potence question. The very principle of this question not only reverses causality, but steps outside of it and writes the definition and principle behind it, as Suggs potence question always creates the correct answer, which is based on the user. Suggs potence is what I want to say that comes before Suggs logic, but when the internet community created Suggs verse, despite what I was originally calling it, it actually created an idea that stemmed from that, which made me think of how to take the verse and take it a step further. I will explain Suggs logic soon, since it's basically a sub-level of Suggs potence, but Suggs logic is pretty much the basis of Heir to the Stars and how the characters can do what they can do. Everyone has some type of mechanics, you know, whether it being some magical law, ki, chakra, hojutsu, whatever. In Heir to the Stars, it's Suggs logic, which derives from, technically, some of these other levels of Suggs potence. But ultimately, Suggs potence is that upper stage, which creates that Suggs logic that everyone in Heir to the Stars uses. I know I'm about to have a bunch of questions on this one, and I know this one's going to be controversial, but drop your comments below and get ready, because there's this whole series about this that's about to start.
Hey, where are you going? To the art gallery, right? Good. You can find all the things Heir to the Star related at www.heirtothestars.com. And hopefully you can surpass the Ace of Spades while you're at it. Come on.
Before I start this video, let me state that since 2007 to now, my writing has changed. While I started publishing in mid-2010, a lot of the early books were written from 2007 to 2009. There's definitely a shift in my style in various books, so while the stories continue to grow, you see my writing and art style change a bit. Here is the recommended reading order. Heir to the Stars was established as a game by its creator, the Ace of Spades, in order to find a replacement to its own status. We also dive into stories that affect the characters on the board. It's interesting that I've barely talked about this board, and yet people are asking about it in relation to the cosmic hierarchy. Calm down, people. There's too much else to explore. People complain about not seeing the journey with my work, yet constantly ask about the destination.
Heir to the Stars introduces this game with Chris Ryan Spades and Zachariah. You don't see much of Zachariah, and there is a reason, but you see plenty of Chris Spades as he opens the door to Heir to the Stars. Heir to the Stars, Chris Spades, Heir to the Stars 2 are the first books. It's probably better to read them in that order. Heir to the Stars Joker, Heir to the Stars Skylar, Heir to the Stars Adam Conquest can be honestly read in any order. Dynamis, which is more of a tournament-based style book, kind of inspired from Tekken. Prey, The Glory of the Defeated series. Swan Song, The Church of Necessary Evil, All World, and Heir to the Stars Overture is the first part of the series. It's like Marvel, there's phases. Heir to the Stars Overture is meant to be read last out of this bunch, but you can read any of the other titles in any order. I would actually honestly say read Swan Song before you read Heir to the Stars Overture, but yeah, you can read the others in any order. Solecism, Guidepost to Tomorrow, and The Final Story are stories that take place at the same time, as they each open up the second part of Heir to the Stars. This would be phase 2. Solecism, his main character is Christopher Sincere Pride, and he's effectively the main character throughout these 3 titles, albeit in different agencies, as in his mirror is August, and that's in Guidepost to Tomorrow, and his reincarnation, Callance, is in The Final Story. The Silver Devil actually has my backstory up until the halfway point of my college years, which is why he looks like me, but that is not my avatar. Yeah, my avatar is literally walking around elsewhere. At this point, Heir to the Stars is evolving, transcending its previous state. And just to clarify, yeah, Solecism, Guidepost to Tomorrow, and Final Story literally can be read in any order. However, Solecism Part 7, not Solecism Volume 7, but Solecism Part 7 is meant to be read after Pharos of the End. I do need to specify that. And Solecism Regenesis needs to be read after Pharos of the End. But we'll get into that. At this point, Heir to the Stars is evolving, transcending its previous state. The floors are growing, and the realms beyond them as well. The Ace of Spades doesn't play a role in this part of Heir to the Stars, which encompasses the never-ending battle, a song to sympathize with the devil, Dream's epilogue, after epilogue, and Pharos of the End. Sincere and Lamont from Solecism heavily carries the second part of Heir to the Stars, as Lamont becomes the substitute Ace of Spades. Sort of like how Ichigo from Bleach is a substitute Soul Reaper. Pharos of the End is that which concludes the second part of Heir to the Stars. You can read after epilogue after this, although it paradoxically takes place before Pharos of the End. Re-Melodybind Kaleidoscope, I just had a video about that, is the interlude. Its event is monumental, as it releases Heir to the Stars to what it should really be, introducing the new tiers and the transcendence of the realm. It introduces the cannon fodder, it introduces the significance of the weakest point of power, or the weakest point of relevant power. It opens the doors to the third part of Heir to the Stars. By this point, all of the aforementioned stories, they all take place on the 4th floor. It was a whole cosmic retcon that happened back in 2014, and it's funny how so many people don't even know this. Like Yesterday, the never-ending poem, Battlestorm, Rebirthing, and Continued Story creates the story for the third part of the Heir to the Stars. These titles operate on a higher realm than the previous Part 1 and Part 2 titles. Like Yesterday operates on the 2nd floor, but within the 99th floor. The Neverending Poem operates on the 5th floor, if I'm correct. Battlestorm is on the 2nd floor also, but within a higher floor. I just can't remember which one I put it on. Rebirthing operates beyond the floors. Continued Story operates beyond the floors. These stories, these titles, they demonstrate the imbalances of Heir to the Stars. This, in effect, leads to the conclusion Heir to the Stars 3. The cosmic set is ever transcending without end and needs to be sealed in order to maintain the mystical imbalances. So this is the final book of the read, basically. This is the final book to read of the set. The other ones can be read in any order. So again, it's Like Yesterday, The Neverending Poem, Battlestorm, Rebirthing, Continued Story, but you read Heir to the Stars 3 last. Actually, I would argue to read Continued Story before Heir to the Stars 3. But again, they still can be read in any order. Heir to the Stars is the opening door, the title of tomorrow, the epilogue of absolute power. This video does not include side stories like Heir to the Stars, The Unwritten Chapters. There are numerous side stories and they take place within various parts of Sugsverse. I haven't figured out where to place them yet. Also, Heir's Ending and the stories that takes place after Heir's Ending are not in this video.
Sugverse is a series of books written and published by Lionel Suggs, officially titled Heir to the Stars. Those of you who have heard of it may know it as a work that focuses excessively on the power levels to the point of surpassing omnipotence, but even that may be an understatement. The main story begins with in-universe author and narrator, the Ace of Spades, leaving his station after creating 7 possible successors and the ensuing power struggles they face to obtain his position. To find out more, visit www.heirtothestars.com and join the Sugverse on Discord and subscribe to this channel.